Denise Welch. Welcome to The Number.
Thank
Look at
you
this.
so much.
You're looking fabulous. LA clearly suits you.
Thank you. I love it. It's a bit cloudy today, but we've just had 5 gorgeous days. I love it here, Darren.
Well, I could tell. I saw on your Instagram recently, was it you in this gorgeous bathing suit and a pair of cowboy boots?
And then the day after I did that picture at the hotel, the Beyonce picture went up, so I think she saw it and thought, I'm not having her steal the cowboy car to Thunder.
Cowboy Denise.
Yeah,
There's a ring to it, doesn't it?
But no, I love it here. We've got lots of friends here. We've been coming for a lot of years, and now my son lives here, so it's all good.
Oh, your son lives here?
Well, just.
Okay.
He's just started. He's just finished his tour. I'm sure we'll talk about.
We'll definitely delve into that.
So it's even more of an excuse for me to come here, as if I need one.
So you strike me as someone who has just lived multiple lives already in one, which I think is fascinating. Obviously, career-wise, you're, actress, thespian, loose woman. You've written books. You're a mum, but not just a mum. You're a rock star mum. Let's dive right into the numbers, because I think we're going to touch on so many different aspects there. And I want to start with your family first, because obviously, that always gives me a good sense of where someone has come from.
It's funny, I never thought I'd do a podcast that was actually called Numbers, because I'm the most unnumbery person. Can't add up. Maths is my thing. So as long as there's no maths involved.
Oh, there's no maths. You're right.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think that's the thing. It's until you actually start thinking about numbers, most of us don't realise the
significance of them. Yeah. It was definitely food for thought.
In terms of your family then, what's the meaningful number for you?
Well, there's 4 of us in the immediate family. There's just my mum and dad and my sister and me. My mum, there would have been more. My mum actually lost 4 children. Yeah.
She lost 4 children?
She did. She did.
Oh my God.
She lost 4 kids, so there would have been, bigger, but obviously we weren't aware of that. So we've grown up as a very happy unit of 4. And I'm very close to my sister. I lost my mum and dad. My mum, I think, 13 years ago. My dad only in 2021. And one of the biggest, heartbreaks of, one of the biggest heartbreaks of my life. He was 84, but not ready for him to go, because he was a larger-than-life character. My dad used to come here with us to Los Angeles. I would go back home absolutely dead from jet lag. I suffer really badly. My dad, in his 80s, all in the bloody mind. I've been to 4 parties this week. I'm going out to be 5th, honestly. He was a party animal and a drag act.
What?
Yes, so for those old enough, our surname being Welsh, my dad went out as his alter ego Raquel, as in Raquel Welch. So yes, when I was at drama school in late 1970s, McDonald's had just come to the UK, and the parents would come down and take their kids to McDonald's. I would be taken to the Black Cap Drag Review in Camden Town. Yeah.
Explains a lot.
It explains a lot, yeah.
But your career is so eclectic, but your life was eclectic by the sound of it.
Or
eccentric.
I didn't think it was. And as I say, he was a very low-key drag act. It started because my mum dressed him up as a woman to go to a party when they were very young, like 22, and he looked fabulous. He was sort of what you would call a pretty young man. And then my dad did a few jokes, and people started saying, "Oh, Vin, come to our party," as that character, and it grew from there. And his love of attention, his hatred of the family business, which was sweets. But
why did he hate the business?
Well, my mum was from a very sort of Irish Catholic working class council house background. My dad was from quite a middle class confectionery background, and Grandpa was not very happy with this, with his choice at the time. And my dad was at university doing economics, but I came along a tad earlier than planned, or if planned at all. And my grandpa insisted that my dad left university and went to work for the family business, and Dad just never got out of it again. So he was kind he was just a salesman, although the Welsh's sweetie name was quite known in the Northeast. And I was on the A-list of every party because I would take big jars of sweets along to everything. Like truly scrumptious, they called me when Chitty Chitty Bang Bang came out. But really, my dad was a glorified salesman for the company, so he threw his energy into his social life. And obviously me becoming an actress was manna from heaven for him,
That's unbelievable. Yeah. So you grew up in Durham?
No, I grew up in what is now sort of Tyne and Weir. So Whitley Bay, Cullercoats, Tynemouth. And then when I was 12, my mum, financially, it was required that my mum went back to work, and she worked in a what they used to call a mental hospital, which we don't call that now, but a mental hospital. It's called Put Mental Hospital. And so we moved to the other side of the river, to County Durham then. Right. And that's when I grew up.
And so would you say you had a happy childhood?
I think a very happy childhood. And my sister Debbie, who's 3 years younger than me, I don't think we ever questioned that everybody didn't have a happy childhood. It was only when I went to drama school when I was 18 that I became aware that not everybody wanted to go home and see their parents. Mm-hmm. You know, it was the summer holidays and I couldn't wait to go home and see my parents. And we'd come back and people would say, oh, I did the obligatory 3 days with the parents. And it's like, wow, not everybody had this background.
And maybe it's my background asking this question, but does the Irish connection play into that at all, do you think?
I think so. I mean, my grandmother, who was Irish Catholic, Molly O'Brien.
Good. Go on, Molly.
Yes, go on, Molly. She was the youngest of 16 children.
Oh my God.
And her mother died age 61. I mean, can you just imagine that?
That's what life was.
The eldest was 25. They just sort of brought up the kids. You know, one of the kids was in the IRA when it wasn't the establishment that did what, you know what I mean? It was just such a fascinating background. Whereas my grandpa, my dad's dad, who John William Welch, who was I loved him. My child perspective of my grandpa was very different to my mum's perspective as a father-in-law. But my nana, my dad's mum, was a wonderful person, and my grandmother was, you know. So, but yes, mum and dad fought like cat and dog, but they kind of were the classic example of can't live together, can't live apart type of thing. So it wasn't like there wasn't arguments and noise. You know, I remember Debbie and I sleeping upstairs and having a friend over and putting notes under the door saying, please don't argue. So they were very volatile.
I think that's a lot of marriages.
Yes,
no?
I think so.
I think it's ups and downs. I mean, how many marriages do you know that where it's plain sailing and they don't argue?
And also sometimes the ones where they don't argue and they try to portray this picture perfect thing is when, you know, you find out that the dad's got another family 20 miles down the road. Yes. You know, so
yeah.
You never know. But yes, my main memories of my childhood were very happy.
So then, as you grow up and you start living your life, and you start doing all the things that young adults and older adults do. When it comes to love in your life, what's your number?
I think it has to be 13. Unlucky for some, but lucky for me. This is my third marriage that I'm in now. And my first husband, I rarely talk about. He was just a complete wanker.
Fair enough.
I don't even care about saying it. We were together very, very, very young. You know, very controlling, all of the stuff. My second marriage to my kid's dad, I don't consider to be a failed marriage. You know, we were together 24 years. We have 2 wonderful children. And
that's a success by all accounts.
It is a success. Mm-hmm. And the fact that we have maintained a friendship. Were there bumps in the road? Of course, we divorced. So let's not pretend. When people say we had an amicable divorce, it's kind of a paradox because it can't be that amicable because you're divorcing, you know.
I don't know.
But I think it was bumpy because we were breaking up. Yes. And we were breaking up very publicly as well, you know. He's a well-known actor, Tim Healy from Our Vie des Impairs. But the press always had their own narrative in which I was the bad girl all the time. It suited them. I was hacked by the press.
Did that get in on you personally, even knowing that wasn't reality?
Yeah, it did. And it was hard because I had a bit of a target on my back for many years. And there were people much higher up the food chain of fame who were misbehaving in far greater ways than I was, who didn't have the target on their back. It's the luck of the draw.
Or was it you were just selling more magazines and newspapers?
Well, it could possibly be. But, you know, PAPs have since, not so long ago, I found myself outside a party, which I don't drink anymore, so I don't go to many parties. But I was kind of thrust into a situation where I couldn't get a car, and there was about 5 of the paps who used to be the bane of my life. And they said to me, you know, oh, we feel awful, you know, Denise, because we were told to target you. So even if you came out of a restaurant and you clearly weren't drunk, but you tripped or you stumbled and your eyes were closed, that was the photo that they wanted, and it would be Denise staggers home from the, you know, it was that. So I'm not saying that my behaviour didn't play into their hands in many ways. Of course it did, but it wasn't all the time, and that's what they wanted. And I was being hacked. Many of us were being hacked. So I was hacked for 2001 to 2007.
Your phone calls and messages?
Oh.
Gosh.
And not only that, bugs in my hotel room.
That's outrageous.
Yeah.
So to bring you back to 13 then, that number.
Sorry. So, God, I don't know if I digress, bloody hell. So 13, I am married now to my husband, Lincoln Townley, who's an artist. But when I met him, we were both drinking. We met in a nightclub at 6 in the morning that didn't open till 4. So that will give you some idea of where we were in life. We got sober, and we got married on July the 13th, 2013 in Portugal. And we have an amazing marriage. So 13 is a very special and lucky number for us.
And last 2013. Okay, so you're.
So we've been married 11 years. We went sober for 12 and married for 11.
And you went sober together?
We did. He went sober 2 months before me. I've told the story before, but we realised that we met under those kind of, nightclubby circumstances, and on paper it would never have worked. I'm 15 years older than him. We were both, partying too hard, both had addictions, and that's how we met, which normally would have been a flash in the pan and gone. But we started to see each other. I was coming out of a messy marriage. We were separated, but of course the public didn't know, the press didn't know, so the press decided that I was the adulteress. So we had everything against us that would have happened. But we realised that the only thing that was spoiling us was alcohol and drugs. And Lincoln knew he was going to lose me, and he stopped. And 2 months later, I stopped for the sake of our relationship, and I've never had so much as a sherry trifle in 12 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
So 18 is, I guess, another number for me, because it was April the 18th that I stopped drinking, and it has been, apart from my children, the thing that I am most proud of, because it's not just your life it saves, physically and metaphorically. It saves the lives of those people who love you. Everybody's life is different, because their main concern is your drinking and how it's affecting you, and ultimately how it's affecting them. My 2 kids are flying, and they wouldn't be able to if mum was still drinking. So, and ultimately, I have a great relationship with my husband.
I love that. And at any point, were you afraid of getting married again?
No, I've always been a fan of marriage, and like I say with Tim, we should have probably started living our own lives slightly earlier than we did, but I still don't consider it a failed marriage. And like I say, that we've developed a great friendship. And with Lincoln, he had been married once before, but very briefly. He had a son when he was 19, Lewis, my beloved stepson, who's given us a wonderful grandson. So when he proposed to me, I was very excited to get married, and I love being married to him. And being sober, I had the clarity to nurture and water and feed my marriage, which I think I was guilty of not doing. Marriage is hard work, and you've got to look after it. And I prioritise it, because if my marriage is good, everything else, everything else works.
Everything else works.
Yeah.
So I guess the flip question to the one that we just asked is, what's the number that you wish you could forget?
It's funny, because the number 22 is my birthday, and it's also the day that my mum died. So my mum died on my birthday.
Mm.
So I decided to flip it because, you know, you look at the number 22 and you're born on the 22nd. So every time you see that number, it's your birthday. So it's a significant date. And then my mum died on May the 22nd. And I thought, God, I'm always going to be really sad when I see that number. And then I thought, I'm going to flip the narrative in my head. So I thought, okay, my mum brought me into the world on the 22nd of May, attached to me. And she left the world on the 22nd of May, attached to me, because I was holding her hand. So I think it was like a circle of life. So now when I see that number, it's kind of bittersweet, but it's still, you know, I get emotional about it.
Oh,
but
I can feel it.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful way of looking at it.
So I just decided that, you know, I didn't want everyone on my birthday to do the head tilt, you know. I know it's your birthday, but it's like it's a circle of life, and I celebrate my birthday and I celebrate my mum on that day as well. So it's yeah.
I recently had Tyler Henry, the Hollywood medium,
oh wow,
as a guest on this podcast, and I asked him that question as someone who seems to, well, and I believe in what he does. I know there's cynics out there who don't. So someone who has this connection to the other side, how does he feel about death?
What did he say?
He said, you know, he still looks up and down before he crosses the road. He still is aware that it'll happen to him and he has no control over it. And I asked him about, you know, does he ever get a sense of regret when people pass over? In the sense that, you know, we always say, don't live your life regretting things. You've only got one life, pass over, etc. And he said, no, but you certainly take stock of the good and the bad that you did and the effect that has on the whole. Because essentially when we pass over, he described it as being a little drop going back into the ocean. But you still have the memories and the relationships and all those connections. So you take stock, but it's not in a negative way. It's just an observation. And I said, what's it like there? What do we feel? And he goes, that's beyond our pay grade as human beings. He goes, it's like trying to explain.
Well, some people think that we're just going to go to Sainsbury's and that do you know what I mean? That it's just going to be like another worldly version of this.
He said, it's like trying to explain biomedical science to a squirrel. We are not capable of even comprehending in the smallest bit, which I thought was fascinating. Sorry, it was just that thought of the circle of life.
I mean, that's another whole topic because I'm an atheist. So, you know, some people, maybe Tyler Henry would say this has got nothing to do with religion per se. I don't know. Whereas some people are comforted by an afterlife, I'm frightened of it.
Are you?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't want to think there is one.
So what, when your time expires here, you just poof, gone?
I hope so. For
really?
me, I hope so.
But you've lived, I'm so fascinated to hear you say that. You've lived such a colourful life and continue to do.
But therefore, as Mae West said, you know, you only live once, but if you do it well enough, once is enough. It's kind of how I feel, because I'm so frightened of eternity. And if I don't like it, I don't want to go there and think, shit, I hate this. And also, I don't want everybody that's died going, hey, because I didn't like half of them. I don't want them. I don't want them all there waiting for me.
Anyway, we don't have an answer for
but
this.
I'll be glad to see you.
That is so interesting. Oh my God. Let's hope it's no time soon.
Yes,
I'd
let's
rather
hope
see you
it's
here
not. Absolutely.
Next. Yeah, I love that. Wow. Okay. In terms of your career, and obviously you, you know, as an actress, a loose woman, you've covered so many bases. What was the number for you? Is there one particular number where everything changed in your career?
It's everything changed in my life and my career, which would be, I mean, can it be like dates, just a date?
Whatever you want it to be.
I mean, I suppose 1989.
Okay.
Because it's the year that I had Matty.
Mm-hmm. And the year Taylor Swift was born.
And the year Taylor Swift was born. And that's what her album was called, isn't it?
That's the only reason I know.
Yeah. So in 1989, Matty was born. I was very, very, very excited to have my first child. I had the most wonderful pregnancy. This again will be a long-winded way of getting to your question, Darren. I apologise. I'm a Geordie.
I'm enjoying it.
So I had predominantly been a theatre actress, touring in theatre. I'm not talking about the National Theatre and this, as my friend Richenda Carey, an actress, used to say, "Oh, darling, I can't get in touch with you. You're constantly doing tours of Drop Your Knickers and Cry Murder." So I was always on tour doing something. And I had this child, and I had the most wonderful pregnancy. I was a typical, when they talk about the blooming woman in pregnancy. My skin was great, my hair was great, I was happy, full of happy hormones, no problems with the actual pregnancy, blah, blah, blah. Long labour, 42 hours he took to come out. I'm sure he was in there playing songs and having a joint, but anyway, it took a long time to get out. And it was a complete life shift because I sadly went on to have severe, crippling, hospitalised postnatal depression. At the same time as my television career was trying to take off. So it was life-changing in so many ways. And I was poorly, I was trying to recover, and I was offered Biker Grove and Spender at the same time. I pushed myself to do these jobs whilst at home kind of having a breakdown. And it was because of the slight fame, well-knownness that comes with being in two popular shows at the same time. I was obviously asked to do several interviews, and I did one for the Evening Chronicle, which was and is our local paper in Newcastle, and it was about having a baby and doing Spender, and I spoke out about the postnatal depression, which was, I was hiding a lot of how bad it was in order to work. A, financially, and B, because I felt that I couldn't not do these jobs. Anyway, Woman's Own, when it was a different beast to it is now, picked up the story, and I was very open about postnatal depression. And my agent at the time, who was about 110, said, "Darling, you're going to ruin everything. You cannot talk about this. People will think you're mad, you'll never work." And I remember saying, Dennis, he was called, I said, "Dennis, I have realised that there is nobody in the public eye talking about mental illness or postnatal depression or anything like that. And if I don't get employed because I talk about this, then I don't want to work for the people who, were going to give me the job."
And this was in the 90s?
This was
like
in
1990?
This was in
89.
89-90. Well, it was 1991, so he was born then, and it was about 1990.
And it's still a conversation we're having.
And so because I talked about it, I was asked to do programs that were very prevalent at the time, like The Time, the Place, and Robert Kilroy Silk, and all these different morning type of shows, And I just found myself becoming a sort of unappointed mental health ambassador because I was talking about it. And I remember doing it down the line from some TV show to Lorraine Kelly and talking about depression. And Lorraine, we've talked about this in the not so distant past, writing to me and saying, "We have never had a response to, people come on here and they talk about lots of physical conditions and, all the time. And the response to you talking about mental illness has been significant."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still waffling on about it to this day because I still suffer from it. So it was 1989 changed my life for good and for bad.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it still carries stigma, and I know mental health is something that we hear much more about, but there's still a stigma, isn't there?
Still.
And I think especially for working women today, I feel it's even, I'm obviously not a working woman, but I think it's even harder almost because we live in a world where it's you should want and expect to have it all.
People just don't understand hormones. It took me 20 years to have someone even listen to the fact that I, as a woman, we give birth to a human being, that there may just be some kind of flux in the hormones that goes on there to produce an actual human from your nether regions, you know? And it took me 20 years to find a doctor, through the actress Sarah Lancashire, to be honest. We have a mutual friend, Darren. And great guy. A mutual friend, Darren Little, well-known writer, writes for EastEnders now, and amongst other things. And Darren knew I was very poorly, and he told me that Sarah, who has a similar illness to me, and I've talked about it to her before, she doesn't mind me talking about it, and she recommended this guy called John Studd, and he tested me and said, "You are so deficient in estrogen, I don't know how you've survived."
Can I ask you, going back to 1989 and 1990, when you spoke out and against the advice of your manager and agent at the time, where does that courage come from?
I don't know. I've had people say to me, it was very brave. And I never thought of it as that, Darren, because all I thought was that if it could happen to me, the person that it was least likely to happen to, it really affected my gay friends, funnily enough. Because all my gay friends used to joke with me and say, because of the way that I was, the party animal that I was, I didn't have a problem with drink, but I loved to party, from a party family. They all thought, they used to joke with me that I would have the baby and the following night I'd be looking for someone to look after it because I wanted to go to the gay clubs with them. This was what everybody thought, and they would joke about that. And when the complete reverse of that happened, they really struggled with it. They saw this decline in me that they found very, very hard because they loved me so much. But because they'd all joked about it, and that's who I thought I'd be, because everything about my pregnancy was so fabulous. I've got many friends who hated being pregnant. They loved the bit where the baby came. I just could have been pregnant forever. So everybody could, and it's interesting because when I did one of these talk shows one day, and there was a very eminent psychologist on, and I would never ever take away from the fact that I have total respect for this wonderful, person and this job. But they said, yeah, we would have been able to tell in your pregnancy that you were prone to this. And I said, with all due respect, you would have had no fucking idea. You really would not have had an idea that I was going to suffer. There was no anxiety. There was no fear. There was, and also socially, I had everything in my favour. I had a wonderful marriage to Tim. We had money in the bank. We had a lovely house. We had, a much wanted child on the way. There were no social conditions. It's not like people often think that postnatal depression happens if you're in a tenement block in Glasgow or Newcastle, you have no money, you have an alcoholic partner, and all of those things. It's got nothing to do. It's got nothing to do with that. It's a horrendously horrible illness, and I think because I was so poorly, and it's very, very difficult to explain clinical depression to someone who hasn't got it.
But it would have been very easy, and probably the easiest thing for you to do, to retreat at that moment in time and to kind of squirrel yourself off and try and get yourself better. But instead, you took the brave step to speak openly at a time when it wasn't.
I just felt it was.
It's kind of become a trademark of your career, though, isn't it? That kind of openness.
And I get criticised. I mean, God, they have this thing on Loose Women. I mean, to be honest, it's usually Twitter. And you can choose not to delve into it, but there's something quite addictive about seeing the horrible things that people say sometimes. And, they have a bingo, they have the Denise Welch bingo card, which is your dad dying, Lincoln, like somebody once said, Denise mentions Lincoln more than the fucking Lincoln Tourist Board. Am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah, say what you want.
And so that's quite humorous. Here she's on about mental illness again. She's on about depression again. I will talk about depression until the day I pop my clogs. Because for all the people that say things like that, there is somebody at home watching or listening who just wants to relate. And over the years, the hundreds and thousands probably of, there was no emails at the time, but letters written. If you're in Coronation Street, you're in this or in that. Loose Women's given me a marvellous platform to talk about it. And there is always somebody out there who is so terrified to speak out, but they think, she's had it. And look, she's gone on to have a career and she's got 2 kids and she has happy times within the illness, because I do. You know, I will not let my illness define my life, because I have wonderful times in between the episodes.
And do you still get episodes?
I do, but I haven't had a major episode since September 2019.
Thank God.
And I have no idea why.
Mm-hmm.
I did a play recently for the first time in years, and my body does weird things. So I was very, very nervous, which is okay, because you're doing a play. There's going to be just 2 of you on stage. The other one was Matthew Healy, you know, from Stars in the Rise. He's a wonderful classically trained theatre actor, brilliant actor, and a wonderful person. And we did this play together, the 2 of us, a Jim Cartwright play. So obviously I'm shitting myself. Yeah. But my body started to try and turn nerves into anxiety, and it was hard, and it made me think, it's still here, you know. But I talked to it like an entity. So the first night of the play, I was crippled with anxiety, and it wasn't healthy. People go, but nerves are healthy. They are, but not anxiety is not. I was crippled, and I did it, and I got through it. And my husband said, nobody would have known.
Yeah, you see, that's it.
So when I got back to the dressing room, I call my thing the Unwelcome Visitor. And I spoke to it as in, you see, you bastard, I've just done that play with you. So you ain't going to stop me doing it. So you can fuck right off. Like it's an entity of like, look what I just did. Yeah. You were there, I did it. You. And then from then I knew that I'd never feel as bad as I did that night, and then within a few performances I was into it and loving it.
That's so funny. Me and my best friend, who I speak to most days, we had kind of a similar conversation going back years, and we were both talking about that thing that comes up inside you. So we both named it, and it's funny because, and she won't mind me saying, she called hers Boris, and every now and then she'd go, fuck off, Boris.
Fuck off, Boris. I can feel you coming.
You know what I mean? And it's like, it is interesting because
it's like a separate entity.
Do you believe in therapy? Have you ever, or do you do therapy?
Yeah, but to be honest, when clinical depression is in, it's an illness. No amount of therapy can move that. It's got to move itself, either with medication or on its own. I'm a great believer in antidepressant medication when prescribed correctly.
Yes.
The thing that I do get on my soapbox about, and I understand it because it is hard to define, when depression is talked about as extreme sadness. It couldn't be further from that. Sadness is a result and an appropriate emotion for something that makes you sad. When my mum died, when my dad died, I had extreme sadness, but not depression. The last time I had a serious depression attack, I was driving up with my friend Lisa to the northeast with her kids in the back, singing loudly, having a fantastic time, about to go up and stay with my sister and her kids, full of the joys of spring. And I'm in the car, in the passenger seat, and we get to the Angel of the North, and I always feel, oh, I'm home. And we were passing the Angel of the North, and I suddenly got this tingling in my palm and a metallic taste in my mouth. And I know I'm within 30 seconds of the depression coming on.
Wow.
And bang, it's on. And there is nothing I can do about it. But what I did that time was, whenever I talked about, this is only 2019, whenever I talked about my illness over the years, it was always in the past tense. So I was talking about it when I had recovered. I was well, you know. And there was something that compelled me, feeling so dreadful, to pick up my phone and say, I am in the midst of a depression. However I feel, I am going to chronicle this over the next few days. And I did. I then put my phone down. Lincoln put me to bed. I was in bed for nearly a week. Lincoln's brilliant, as was my ex-husband, Tim. He just removes everything that he can from my life. If there's anything I have to do, you know, he says to my friend, she's not doing well, just leave her for the time being. I'll tell her that you've called, you know. And when I came out of it after about 5 or 6 days, it had gone viral. I'd been one of the bongs on News at 10. And it's so interesting to me. Yeah, so interesting to me because I had talked about it for 30 years. But it's because I had chronicled it in real time, so people were watching an episode of depression. I could barely remember doing it when I came round.
That's so powerful.
It was powerful, yeah.
And touched a lot of people.
And I wrote a book, The Unwelcome Visitor. After that, I wrote it with help. I didn't do it all myself, and that was, Sunday Times bestseller. So it was, and I was frightened about writing it because I wondered if I was going to. I think the word triggered is a bit used too much, but I wondered if I was going to be triggered by some of the things I would have to do. But actually, it was very cathartic.
I'd say so.
Yeah, it was.
In terms of like looking at your life so far, what age or ages for you stand out?
Well, a very significant age for me is 54, because it's when I got sober. And I'm a bit sort of embarrassed by it because I have a real dilemma. I think you said earlier, we were talking, I can't remember if it was on the podcast or before, but about you shouldn't regret anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I try not to.
Mm-hmm.
But I do regret not giving up alcohol and stuff and going into that. I started with alcohol and drugs properly when I was in my late 30s. I was in Coronation Street. My depression was really bad. I was medicating an illness. And somebody told me that this drug would help me feel better. And at that point, if someone said, if you chop your head off now, you'll feel better, that's what I would have done.
Yes.
Anyone who has been in the grip of a serious clinical depression, you will do anything to stop the pain. And very sadly, that is sometimes suicide. And people very rarely commit suicide, take their own life because they want to die, they want to stop the pain. And that was always a release for me. I can always do that. I was never suicidal. I never thought about it, but it's always there, as in if the pain gets too great. And doing a line of cocaine took the pain away for 40 minutes. Sadly, that developed an addiction, and then I couldn't do without it. And I wish that I'd had the strength to stop earlier, but then, as Lincoln says, we would never have met.
Everything happens when it's supposed to happen.
It does.
That's
It does, and I try not to regret it.
Yeah.
But as a mom, you're just born with you just have maternal guilt for everything, But I have a wonderful relationship with Matty and with Louis. But Louis was 9 when everything stopped, so he doesn't really, He kind of goes, I sort of wish I'd been around more for the rock and roll years,
But you're completely thriving now. I'm even looking at you. You were talking about, when you were pregnant, your skin, your hair, your nails, everything was just, blossoming. That's how I feel you are now.
Well, that's very kind.
And it's the first time to meet. That's what I see.
Yeah, that's lovely, because was it George Bernard Shaw said that I'm 66 coming up, but he said when you get to 50, you've got the face you deserve. Darren, I fucking deserve a far worse face than I've got. Believe you me. The lack of care and attention I've given my bloody face. So I think genetically I'm quite lucky with my mum. But yes, you do give yourself a facelift by giving up all those things and cigarettes. I was a massive smoker as well. Haven't smoked for years.
That is brilliant. And also, so your career has just gone from strength to strength. I know you've had your ups and downs, but you've showed incredible resilience and an incredible
I think
ability,
resilience is a good word for me, yeah.
Resilience and reinvention. They're the two words that strike me.
I think it's always been about, as you get older in this business now, is about remaining relevant, and doing Loose Women has been wonderful for me. Does it affect your acting career? Yes, it does. If you become known as somebody who's very opinionated, and also because of Loose Women, my partying and everything kind of played out a lot in front of people and what's it. So it did have a knock-on effect on my acting career. But then again, it's given me other opportunities that my acting career wouldn't have given me. Forays into reality television, some bad, some good.
Well, you won Celebrity Big Brother.
I did. It was slightly, I always feel it was a little bit of a hollow victory because it was such an unhappy time for me. Oh. And people were selling stories on me when I was in there, including my manager at the time. No, my manager, who I thought my manager was kind of, I was creating a car crash metaphorically, and that he was picking up the pieces of it. he was causing the car crash, which he then admitted to me.
Wow.
Which is something that took quite a while to get my head around. That was tough. But
that's quite the betrayal.
It was quite the betrayal, yeah. And it still hurts because it also tried to, break up Lincoln and I. But again, that's another thing we survived. So that's, I think, why we're so strong. We had fucking everything against us, you know. But anyway,
it's that resilience.
The resilience. Doing things like dancing on ice. I mean, who else has been taught to skate by Torval and Dean?
Exactly.
And the wonderful Matty Healy, of course. But who was my skating partner. And we're still great friends to this day.
Is it, because obviously then, and I did say this at the top of the podcast, you are now a rock star mum as well. Is it odd for you living a life in the spotlight, so you understand the ups and the downs and all that, to now have a son who's kind of experiencing his version of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not odd because it's not an overnight thing. Matty was 35 this week. I've celebrated this being in Los Angeles, which has been fabulous. But he started the band when he was 14 in our garage. So the 1975, who were Drive Like I Do, who were the Slowdown, who were all these different things. This is no overnight, success.
Yes, it's 20 years in the making.
And it's 20 years in the making. And so, there were times like when Matty said in 2013, when I was getting married to Lincoln, and I was doing a play with Keith Allen in Kingston upon Thames. I remember vividly, we were in the hotel room, and Matty rang and said, "Mum, how would you feel if I couldn't come to your wedding?" And I said, "Well, I'd fucking kill you." I said, "There is no excuse." And he said, "Not even if we're supporting the Rolling Stones at Hyde Park." And I used to say, when they were under my feet, and I'm feeding them all, and they're there with their guitars and bottles of whiskey at 5 a.m. walking through the house, and I would go, when you're on stage with the Rolling Stones, then you can do this and then you can do that. So what can I say, But I always had a faith in Matty, and it's been wonderful, and it's been heartbreaking because they were all under our feet because everything happened at our house in Cheshire, where we had the space for them to rehearse, and all the girlfriends came to us and everything, and they were driving me mad. But then when they were 22 and Chocolate was picked up by Radio 1 and the trajectory started, they all just left me. And it was, please come back and drive me mad and be under my feet.
It's the lovely happy times, happy memories.
And it's just been very different because I share my son with a lot of people. I just said to him this week, because he's been on tour for nearly 2 years, Darren, this international tour is exhausting. You imagine what it's like when we go home, the jet lag we have for sometimes a fortnight. That's just for like 2 years, constantly. And so when I go see him in a gig, I'm kind of sharing him with all these people. And the next day, they're not very present because they've got someone saying, "You've got to be here and you've got to be at this airport." So just coming here and spending a few days with him has just been fantastic.
It's precious, isn't it?
It's precious.
Yeah.
And I mean, people always say you're somewhere like the O2. There's 20,000 people there. They're all mouthing. They know every single word of his songs. I know you're a fan of the band.
Yeah.
You didn't even know about The Connection.
I didn't until yesterday,
yeah.
and I was like, hold on, is that the same band?
Yeah.
And then I told you that.
Yeah.
That what's the song? I'm terrible with this name with
somebody,
lyrics.
I think it's somebody.
So I've listened to that song thousands of times, and it's got me through some really low places.
The true fans, what this band means to them is very, very heartwarming. You get crazy fans. You get,
Yeah.
Yeah, but the actual true fan base of the 1975, it has saved some of their lives.
Yeah.
They say that. They either say it to me, they say it online. Some of Matthew's songs and lyrics mean so much to them. And I when I look around and I see these 20,000 people, or when you go to Madison Square Garden, there's 20,000 Americans there, people who aren't even from our country, and they know every single word of what he's singing. And I look around and it's like, wow. And then they spot me. There's this thing where I'm not known in America at all. But if you go to a 1975 concert, they know me because I'm Matt's mom,
Yeah.
you know, and
Super
they'll all turn
fans.
around and wave, and I'm like Ava Peron, you know, standing like this, like this. I was doing it once at Blackpool years ago, and all these fans looked up, and I'm waving like this, and someone put the post of it going, "Don't cry for me, Blackpool," and I'm there like, so it's fun. But you know, I worry about him. It's a big world, but he's got good people around him, and the great thing is the band, including Waffy on, you know, there's the 4 boys in the band, but then there's Waffy on sax, there's Jamie on piano, there's Polly, my niece's his cousin's girlfriend, who's on guitar. It's all one big family. So he is touring with his family and friends.
People who know him.
It's
and who
very
you know.
different to being a manufactured band.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to wrap this up very shortly because I could speak to you for days.
Me too.
I wanna just ask you a couple of quick fire questions before we go.
Yeah.
What's your favorite time of day?
My favourite time of day, funnily enough, when I'm here, is early in the morning. And I never used to be a morning person. It's the jet lag.
Oh yeah, I get that as well. I'm like,
oh, it's 6 o'clock and I want to go for coffee to Dialogue Cafe and have a...
You go to Dialogue?
I go to Dialogue.
Dialogue's like my favourite spot.
It's our spot for the morning. Whereas at home, I don't want to get out of bed.
Do you eat beef?
So do I eat beef?
Yeah. Have you tried their beef brisket burrito?
No.
Oh my god. Breakfast beef brisket burrito. It's all the beef.
I wouldn't have even thought of having that.
It is divine.
Delicious.
But get it for lunch.
Might get it for lunch.
Anyway, yeah.
So funnily enough, in America where we are, I would say the morning. At home, I love at the end of a busy day, it's about 6 o'clock at night, get me jammies on, settle down, either my reality or my true crime. And I am in seventh heaven. I've become one of those, do they call them pajama files, where you can't walk through the front door without putting your pajamas on.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know I don't own a pair of pajamas.
Oh my God.
Don't own a pair.
You have. I'm going to get you a pair.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I go around in my jocks.
No, you got to be pajama file. You got to be pajamaphilia.
I love pajamaphilia.
Yeah.
What's your favourite number?
My favourite number is 13. I've made my favourite number. Also, you can get really good deals on flights because a lot of people won't fly on the 13th.
Oh, that's so clever. I never knew that.
So they're unlucky for some 13th. So I will sometimes fly on the 13th. My lucky number for casinos, I used to be a bit of a gambler. Listen, I used to be a bit of a gambler. I'm not talking about big money. I didn't have any money. But it's always 29. So if I was ever going to put like more than one chip on, it would be 29. So there's something about, I don't know why it's 29, but I would say that is a favourite number, that and 13.
Interesting. What's your guilty pleasure?
Probably true crime.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because you shouldn't really be so excited about murders being filmed. And when I run out of true crime, I think, being filmed.
Be careful what you wish for in this city, that's all I'll say.
Yeah.
What does the world need more of?
Well, we obviously need more of love. It certainly needs less of the politicians that we've got. It's what it needs less of. I think COVID exposed so much corruption and everything in this world. I don't know, it's so corny to say that, because I suppose everybody just says that we need more love and we need more compassion. And what the world needs more of is looking at the fact, it's not going to be political, but we need more knowledge of the fact that in the UK at the moment, we have 4 million children living in poverty. So it's all very well to help everybody else, and so we should, but we should not have children. We should not have families sending children to school on alternate days because they have one pair of shoes.
It's crazy,
so
isn't it?
we need more of looking on our own doorsteps sometimes before we help others.
What's the number that strikes the fear of God in you?
God, that's a really hard one. I don't know. What's the number that strikes the fear of God in you? Give me an example.
Well, some people will say 666.
Right, which is the devil.
Yeah.
But I'm not religious, so I don't believe in the devil.
Last orders, whatever time that is, generally.
Well, it used to be. It used to be.
But you know when you're not ready to go home, I'm like, no, I've just got started.
Well, of course, when I used to party, we used to get chucked out of some of the places at 3 a.m. and then you used to start going around all those illegal ones in Cambridge Circus. I knew every illegal drinking joint on the door there. I mean, fear of God in me. You know, when I hear anything to do with 9/11, still that just the hearing of the words 9/11, I think, strikes the fear of God into any of us who lived through that time. You know, because I think it was the one time in this world where every single screen, I think Andy Warhol talked about this when he was alive, because he hadn't obviously witnessed that. It was the one time in the world that everybody was looking at the same terrifying images. There was no other images. We were all living it in real time.
I was meant to fly to San Francisco that day from Ireland.
Were you?
Didn't happen. Ended up in Birmingham. My holiday from San Francisco ended up in Birmingham.
Oh
I had a
my
great
God.
time. Birmingham and Nottingham.
Birmingham now is fantastic.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
But I think that strikes the fear of God into me, because I remember seeing all the papers the day the world changed and everything, and it really, really did. And so I just think from anything that you hear, I think I would say that still strikes the fear of God into me.
And before I let you go and enjoy the rest of your holiday, what's the number one lesson that took you the longest to learn?
Wow. The number one lesson that took me the longest to learn. The number one lesson that I love the most is that I would like to say to some people, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. I think that is something. And I think that the lesson that took me the longest to learn is that you can forgive yourself. I deal with a lot of guilt and shame because of there are no excuses for behaviors or decisions, but there are often reasons for it. And I made some very bad decisions when I was drinking and using. And it took me a long time to forgive myself, because guilt is something we all deal with. Shame is something very different. And you have to learn to forgive yourself for that. And I have done that now, because we are all, we're all just trying to get through the best we can. We're all human. As a mum, just because you are a mum or a dad, or there's no guidebook as to how you do things. But I think that certainly for me, I was aware that how things impacted on my family, but they've forgiven me. It just took me longer to forgive myself, and I think I have now.
I like that. It makes me think of I think it was, and I'll probably butcher this, but Maya Angelou said, people won't remember what you looked like. People won't remember what you gave them. People won't remember what you said to them, but they will remember how you made them feel.
Well, and that is very, very true. That is very true.
Well, on that note, Denise Welch.
Oh, Darren.
What an absolute delight.
Thank you
so much.
So much for having me here in LA. Thank you, and you're beautiful.
Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of your trip.
Thank you.
And I feel we're going to be reconvening on this. Maybe over coffee.
Absolutely.
Maybe I'll have an espresso martini and you can have a coffee.
Thank you.